Ever get that feeling like you want to really dive deep into something, something kind of off the beaten track? Like you're super curious, but you just don't have like all the time in the world to become an expert.
I know exactly what you mean. It can be overwhelming, right?
Totally. So that's what we're doing here, kind of like a shortcut to understanding something really cool. And today we're going deep into Asclepias curasavica, also known as Cancerina.
And to make things even more interesting, we're going to be looking at how it could potentially be used topically, like in a balm or a salve, and we're going to pair it with another fascinating plant, Elexi guayusa or guayusa.
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of info to explore. We're looking at traditional uses of Cancerina, and then there's this whole concept of a product line, Ocelotl Balm. Plus, we'll dig into what the science tells us about Cancerina, and of course, safety is always a top priority, so we'll cover that too.
Absolutely. So our mission, if you will, is to really extract the most valuable nuggets about using Cancerina and Guayusa for topical relief and stimulation, connect the dots between traditional uses and what we know today, and make it all crystal clear for you listening in.
Awesome. So let's jump right in with Cancerina. Even the name itself sounds kind of, I don't know, intriguing, right?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a type of milkweed originally from the tropical Americas, and here's a little fun fact. Its scientific name, Asclepius, comes from Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine.
Wow. So right off the bat, we're seeing a connection to healing.
Exactly. And when you start digging into its traditional uses, it's pretty amazing how versatile this plant is.
So tell me, what did people use it for way back when?
Well, a lot of different indigenous groups prepared teas and decoctions, basically, like steeping the bark or leaves in water.
Kind of like we do with tea today.
Exactly. And they use these for a whole range of things. Think reducing inflammation, boosting antioxidants, aiding digestion, even helping with breathing problems.
Wow, that's a lot. But when we talk about our balm idea, we're focusing more on how it's used on the skin, right?
You got it. Now, externally, people would crush the bark of Cancerina into these poultices and compresses, applying them to wounds, sores, areas of swelling. Some cultures even used it for things like snake bites and insect stings.
Snake bites. I mean, that sounds like they really trusted its healing power.
They did. And it wasn't always just crushed bark either. Sometimes they would mix the extract with animal fats or plant oils to make ointments and salves, similar to how we use arnica or calendula today for skin issues.
Interesting. Earlier you mentioned something about using it as smoke or incense. That was unexpected.
Yeah, it's not as well documented, but there are some hints that certain groups may have burned Cancerina as smoke or incense.
What for? Like some kind of ritual thing?
Possibly. Maybe for spiritual cleansing or even a type of respiratory therapy, kind of similar to how some cultures use sage or copal. It's thought they might have been inhaling certain compounds released when the plant burns.
Fascinating. So with all these different ways to use it, how did they actually prepare it back then?
Well, they had quite a few methods up their sleeve, concoctions and teas like we talked about. Then there were those poultices and compresses, applying the plant directly. And then there were tinctures, which is soaking the plant in alcohol to extract its goodness.
Ah, tinctures, yeah.
And of course, there's the potential incense use and those ointments and salves made by mixing extracts with fats or oils. So they really had a diverse toolkit, adapting to what they needed and what resources they had available.
It's clear that Cancerina has this long, rich history. But what's actually in it that could explain all these uses? What does modern science say?
This is where it gets really cool. Cancerina contains a whole bunch of natural chemicals, what scientists call phytochemicals. The ones we're most interested in are cardiac glycosides, flavonoids, and alkaloids.
Cardiac glycosides. I feel like I've heard of those in relation to like heart medications or something.
Yeah, you're right. They are known for their effects on the heart. But what's super intriguing is how they influence this thing called the sodium-potassium pump in our nerve tissue.
Okay, and what does that pump do?
Think of it as this tiny little regulator of electrical signals in your nerves. By slightly tweaking how this pump works, cardiac glycosides can indirectly affect neurotransmitter signaling, which is how our nerve cells talk to each other.
Oh, I see. So it's messing with the communication lines.
In a way, yeah. And this could potentially impact things like dopamine, which plays a big role in stuff like opioid withdrawal. There's even a possibility of some interaction with opioid receptors themselves. But, and this is a big but, these compounds can be toxic if you take in too much. That's why we're exploring topical applications. Much safer that way.
So no Cancerina smoothies.
Yeah, got it.
What about those other compounds, the flavonoids and alkaloids? What do they do?
Well, flavonoids are famous for their anti-inflammatory properties. Studies suggest that they can block certain enzymes like COX2 and the production of prostaglandins, which are major players in inflammation.
That makes sense, given how it was used traditionally for swelling and all sorts of skin issues. And what about the alkaloids?
Alkaloids are a really diverse bunch, found in loads of plants. In Cancerina, they might be interacting with receptors for neurotransmitters like acetylcholine and serotonin. These are involved in tons of bodily functions, including how we feel pain. So it's possible they contribute to Cancerina's pain-relieving effects.
So we've got this plant that's been used for wound healing for ages, and now we're finding it has compounds that could actually target inflammation and pain. That really strengthens the case for using it topically, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And there's another cool connection here with those monarch butterflies.
Oh, yeah, tell me about that.
Well, you know how monarch caterpillars feed exclusively on milkweed?
Yeah, I remember that from, like, elementary school science.
Right. Well, Cancerina is one of those milkweeds.
Hmm.
And this feeding is crucial for the butterfly's transformation.
So you're saying there's a parallel between that metamorphosis and the idea of healing.
Exactly. This natural process of change and renewal, it beautifully mirrors the idea of healing and regeneration that we're aiming for with topical applications, like nature's giving us a little hint.
I love that. Okay, so let's say someone listening wants to make their own cancerine-infused oil. How would they do it safely? What are the steps?
For a DIY approach, you'd start with dried Cancerina bark or leaves. And I got to emphasize, you absolutely need to be sure of what you're using. Proper identification is key. Then you'd gently steep this plant material in a carrier oil. Good options include olive oil, coconut oil, almond oil, or jojoba oil.
So basically, you're letting the oil absorb all the good stuff from the plant.
Right. Now, there are two ways to do this. You can do a slow infusion, placing the mixture in a sealed jar in a warm spot for several weeks, letting it do its thing gradually. Or you can use gentle heat, like a warm oven or a low setting on your stovetop, but be careful not to overheat it. This speeds things up, maybe taking a few hours instead of weeks.
And then, to turn that oil into a balm, you just need something to make it solid, right? Yeah.
Yep. Beeswax is a great option, readily available and effective. You just gently melt it and stir in your infused oil. And to really pamper your skin, you can add things like shea butter or cocoa butter for extra moisture.
Okay, so now we've got our Cancerina oil. Maybe we've even turned it into a balm. But what about this Guayusa? Why combine the two?
Well, this is where the synergy comes in. Guayusa, which comes from a holly tree in the Amazon rainforest, is known for its stimulating effects. It's got this special mix of caffeine, theobromine, and L-theanine.
Sounds like an energy drink.
Kind of. These compounds act as stimulants, so they can make you feel more alert, but they're also vasodilators, meaning they can help improve blood circulation.
So theoretically, the Guayusa could help get the Cancerina to where it needs to go more effectively, maybe even boost its effects on, say, muscle stiffness or something.
That's the idea. Combining Cancerina, which might help with pain and inflammation, with Guayusa, which could boost circulation and give a gentle energy kick, could create a topical product that tackles discomfort and any associated stiffness or fatigue.
That's really clever. Now, tell me about the name Ocelotl Balm. Where did that come from?
Well, Ocelotl is the word for jaguar in Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs. We picked this name to bring to mind power, speed, strength, that deep muscle stuff, kind of like how Tiger Balm tries to project effectiveness.
I like it. Plus, it ties back to where these plants come from, right?
Yeah.
Like honoring that tradition.
Exactly. And in Aztec culture, the jaguar was sacred, representing ferocity, endurance, even healing.
It's a very evocative name. So what kind of products are we imagining in this Ocelotl Balm line? Like, what would they be good for?
We're thinking of two main formulas. First up, Ocelotl Balm Fast Acting. The goal here is quick relief, something that absorbs quickly. So we're thinking Aloe Vera Gel as the base because it absorbs fast and has that cooling effect.
Ooh, soothing.
Right. And then we'd add a low concentration of both Cancerina and Guayusa essential oils, just 1% each, plus some peppermint essential oil for an extra cooling kick and to help it penetrate quickly.
So that's your go-to for when you need immediate relief. What about the second formula?
That would be Ocelotl Balm Extra Strength Deep Muscle Relief. This one's designed for more serious pain and to get deep into the muscles. The base would be extra virgin olive oil, known for its deep penetration, plus beeswax for a richer texture and slower release of those active ingredients.
Yeah, that sounds perfect for, like, muscle aches and pains.
Exactly. And we'd also include arnica oil, a classic remedy for muscle soreness. The concentration of the active extracts would be a bit higher in this one, 2% for Cancerina and 1.5% for Guayusa. And we'd throw in a bit of capsaicin extract for a warming sensation to further boost circulation, and a touch of clove oil for a mild numbing effect.
Okay, so one for quick surface relief and the other for those deeper, longer-lasting muscle issues. It seems like a pretty comprehensive approach.
Right.
But, with Cancerina and especially those cardiac glycosides, we need to talk about safety.
You're absolutely right. Safety is non-negotiable. Because of those cardiac glycosides, any topical Cancerina product needs to use very low concentrations. The 1% and 2% we talked about for the Ocelotl Balm concepts reflect that.
So we're talking small amounts just to be on the safe side.
Exactly. And it's crucial to avoid applying anything with Cancerina to those sensitive areas, like the inside of your nose or mouth, or on broken or irritated skin. These spots allow for faster absorption, which could lead to problems.
Makes sense. What about people who are pregnant or breastfeeding or those with, heart issues? Should they steer clear altogether?
They need to be extra cautious. If you fall into any of those categories, talk to your doctor before using anything with Cancerina. And like with any new product you put on your skin, it's always wise to do a patch test first. Just apply a tiny amount to a small area and see how your skin reacts before going all in.
Okay, so low concentrations, avoiding sensitive areas, and checking with your doctor if you have any concerns. All really important points. Now, thinking about the future, are there ways to make these plant extracts even more potent for topical use?
There's definitely some exciting potential there. Some of the sources mention advanced extraction methods like steam distillation or even solvent-based extractions like BHO, that's butane hash oil.
BHO, like what they use for cannabis.
Yep, same idea. These methods can really concentrate those active compounds, but with BHO you have to be super careful because butane is highly flammable. Safety first, always.
So, more potent extracts could be on the horizon. What kind of research still needs to be done to fully understand how these plants work on the skin?
We need more rigorous studies. For example, in vitro studies, like those opioid receptor binding assays, could help us see how those compounds in Cancerina actually interact with those pain receptors on a molecular level. And then we need well-designed animal studies to really test how effective topical Cancerina is for pain and inflammation, and to double-check its safety when applied to the skin.
What about the idea of using Cancerina for opioid withdrawal? Is there any truth to that?
That's more speculative at this point. It's based on the possibility that some of the compounds in Cancerina might interact with those dopamine, GABA, and opioid pathways in the brain. The thought is that maybe it could help manage those tough withdrawal symptoms naturally. But this needs way more research to see if it's actually beneficial, and of course to make sure it's safe.
It's amazing to think about all the potential benefits that might be hiding in these traditional remedies. So before we wrap up, what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember about Cancerina and Guayusa?
The big picture is this. Cancerina has a long history of use in traditional medicine, particularly for topical applications. We're starting to see scientific evidence backing up those traditional uses, hinting at its potential for pain relief and reducing inflammation, all thanks to those special phytochemicals it contains.
And pairing it with Guayusa, with its stimulating effects and potential to boost circulation, that's where things get really innovative.
Absolutely. And then there's the Ocelotl Balm concept, showing how these ingredients could be formulated into actual products for different needs.
What were some of the biggest aha moments for you as you were exploring all of this?
For me, it's that connection between ancient wisdom and modern science. It's fascinating how a plant that people used for healing for centuries might actually contain compounds that science is now confirming could be effective against pain and inflammation. And this idea of a natural topical blend that could both soothe pain and give you a little energy boost, that's super exciting.
Absolutely. It really makes you wonder what other secrets are waiting to be uncovered in the world of plants. So to leave our listeners with a final thought.
Think about this. How can we keep bridging the gap between traditional knowledge and scientific research? What other time-tested remedies are out there, just waiting for science to shine a light on their potential? It's this amazing intersection, this blend of ancient wisdom and modern validation that could lead us to some incredible natural solutions for pain, well-being, and maybe even more. Who knows what we might discover?
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time.
It's been a pleasure. Take care, everyone.